Hi guys, this is Alex from Mason Lifestyle, and it is part 3 of our sew along for M6696. And guys, I am hoping that I can get out of my house today and go get some buttons so I can finish this dress for you. Today we are going to be working on the placket and also working on the collar, and that's it, and the buttons, and we will be done. All right guys, let's get started. This is our part 3 sew along for M6696, and I am doing view D as in David. So now I want you to grab your front bands, and this is piece 17. You should have 2 of these, and they should be interfaced. I interface my only half of it because I am using denim and I don't want my front band to get just too thick or too stiff. So I want you to go ahead and grab the one with the notch edge and match your notch in your front bodice, which you should have, right? And I want you to go ahead and pin. And I want you to pin this all the way down and do this for both bands on your dress. All right, guys, I want you to go ahead and stitch 5/8 inch seam allowance. Don't forget the back stitch at the start and all the way to the end. Go ahead and do that now for both front bands. That's piece number 17. All right, guys, so we attached our front bands, piece 17, or as I like to call them, the plackets, right? So now the pattern's asking you to go ahead and stitch. So fold your placket, right? You had it like this, you attached it, fold it in at the bottom and stitch. Stitch across, and then I trimmed it, trim my corners. You're going to turn this over, right? So that's what your hem's going to be looking like. Once you do that, I want you to press this seam allowance. I want you to press it towards inside. And then if you are doing this in denim, I want you to go ahead and grade your seams, okay? Go ahead and grade your seams. Do a prettier job than what I'm gonna do. I need to fix this because it's looking a little bit all over the place. But go ahead and grade your seams, okay? And then I want you to press your placket through the fold line. You had a fold line on your pattern piece. I want you to press, and the pattern had you also press it in 3/8 of an inch and to trim this. So listen to me. Trim this side, all right? The side where you have your extra seam allowance. Yes, go ahead and press this side 3/8 of an inch. What I want you to do, I want you is to go ahead and put it like this. Oop, got a little bit extra thread there. I want you to press it, right? Really nice. And I want to make sure that you press it so it's over the stitch from your placket. And I want you to top stitch on this side. So pretty much the same thing that we did for the waistband. Remember how we folded our placket and we stitched in the ditch? I want you to do the same thing for this, okay? Because the pattern is asking you to slip stitch. And guys, I like my needle and thread too. I love it. Needle and thread, awesome. Sometimes it's awesome to do that by hand, but you have two plackets and they're each at least like 3.5 feet long, depending on your hem length. So it's gonna take you quite some time. So this is a quicker way. So go ahead and stitch right on that ditch and make sure that you are catching, right? That you are catching the back side of your placket, right? All right, guys, go ahead and do that for both front bands. All right, guys, so I am again attaching the back of my placket, stitching in the ditch, which is essentially I am stitching right on that seam. And I'm using a stitch in the ditch, but and if you don't have one, it is, like I said in my video number 2, it is life-changing because it saves you a ton of time. So go ahead and do that now for both plackets. Guys, so I went ahead and top stitch my plackets just so I don't have to use needle and thread and do any slip stitching. So now we are going to work on the collar, guys, and we are getting closer to the end. So I want you to stay stitch the collar, and I want you to start from the center and all the way to the sides. So again, I want you to stay stitch. Do not skip this step just because we're going to be working on this area and we do not want the collar to stretch on us. So go ahead and stay stitch your collar. Go ahead and do that now. So I went ahead and stay stitch my collar, and I'm going to go ahead and put my dress off to the side. And I want you to grab piece number 18. There's 2 pieces. This is the collar, one that's interface and another one that's not. And you have 2 notches at the bottom. I want you to stitch with right sides together and see where I'm putting my pins. So I want you to pin right side with right side. So I want you to stitch 5/8 inch seam allowance. Start over here. You are going to pivot, and I would definitely say grab your seam gauge and mark where the seam allowance is on this side, where the seam allowance is on this side. Let me grab mine. So guys, you have this 5/8, right? Grab your seam gauge, and that's kind of like where mine is at. Then grab your seam gauge, and hey, look at that, right? So that dot right there, that is where I'm going to pivot. But instead of just pivoting and keep going that way, I want you to do 2 stitches at an angle right here, okay? And then keep going, 5/8, keep going, and then same thing on this side. We are going to measure 5/8, right? Because we want to know where are we going to pivot in the machine. And then again, 5/8 on this side, and looks like it's right there, right? So at this corner, I want you to do 2 stitches at an angle and then keep going 5/8 all the way down, and I want you to back stitch. So we are stitching our collar. So again, 5/8, right at this corner is where you're going to pivot. At this corner, do 2 stitches at an angle. Keep going all the way down to that dot right there, and then again 2 stitches at an angle and keep going down. Why do we do that? I want to do that so we are trying to get a pointy end on our collar, and this is a great way to do it. I'm doing denim, so I'm going to see how pointy I can get this. I'm trying to get a nice sharp point, but I'm going to give it a good shot. So go ahead and stitch your collar. Again, this is piece 18 and you have two pieces, one that's interface and another one that's not. Go ahead and do that now. And I want you to leave this edge that has the notches. I want you to leave that edge open, all right? Go ahead and do that now. So we went ahead and stitched our collar. Now I want you to grab your shears and I want you to trim all of that seam allowance, and then of course at the corners, go ahead and trim. Now I want you to turn this, right? I want you to turn it, grab your point turner and get those pointy ends poked out, and then I want you to press this. All right, so go ahead and do that. So I went ahead and turned my collar, pressed it, and I also went ahead and basted that open edge, right? So now I'm going to grab piece 19, which is your collar band, and I want you to press 3/8 of an inch. Grab your seam gauge, right? Go ahead and measure it, right? There you go, 3/8, and go ahead and press that up. Once you have that, you have 2 notches on your collar, and then you have 2 notches on your collar band. I want you to go ahead and pin those, right? And actually, I want this to be like this, right? So again, right sides together, right? And then you also have the interfaced collar band, right? And I am matching also my centers. So again, I want to match my center, I want to match my notches. So once you have that, your 2 notches. And this part is going to be, it's like a little bit rounded. I don't know if you guys can see it, right? But then you grab, and your collar is essentially just sandwiched in between the collar band. So keep pinning, right? Keep pinning. And again, try to match raw edge with raw edge. You have these dots right at the end. There. And see how kind of like your collar band is kind of lifting a little, because it's not meant to be a straight piece. This piece is meant to be curved. And I'm talking about your collar band. So again, keep pinning. Okay. Again. Pin. So go ahead and pin, guys. And again, you see how my collar band is lifting ever so slightly. So now I want you to stitch. I want you to stitch from this end, and I want you to still stitch right where you turned it over, not on this side. Lift that seam allowance and start at that edge. 5/8, keep going all the way down, right? and then again end at that dot. Again, backstitch. Take your time. And yes, this piece is, it's lifting a little because your collar band, it's meant to wrap around your neck. So go ahead and do that now. So I went ahead and stitched my collar band to my collar, right? And now I want you to trim and see how I lifted that. So now I want you to trim all of this. Guys, I want you to turn it, right? And usually I don't press my collar band. What I do is I grab my handy little tailor's ham and I wrap it, right? I wrap it around and I just kind of do a little bit of I wouldn't say shaping, but I steam it. And I try not to press my collar band down because your collar band, again, is meant to wrap around your neck. So, and I still have to turn that in and all that good stuff. So go ahead and trim your seam allowance. And again, your collar band is not meant to just lay flat. It's meant to be wrapping around your collar, right? So go ahead and do that now. All right, guys, this is what I mean about kind of shaping your collar versus just pressing it all the way down. You really want that collar stand, right? You had a collar band and your collar. So you really want this to kind of stand and wrap, okay? Now that we have this done, I want you to go ahead again and grab your dress, right? And you have a center seam and you also had a notch on your collar for center seam. And if you look at your pattern piece, right, you have, it says right here, center back. So again, center back, and that's where that pin is at. So I'm going to start right there. Pin it. And you're probably going to have to do a little bit of easing in, right? And remember, I'm keeping that top piece of the collar, I'm keeping that loose. And those triangles, that is my shoulder seam. Again, guys, I'm going to have to ease that in. You have that notch, right? That's my edge. So keep pinning, okay? Other side, same thing. And again, that triangle in your pattern piece, that's your shoulder seam. So it's a nice little guide. So guys, I want you to go to the machine, keep this top piece out of the way, and I want you to stitch 5/8 inch seam allowance. Don't forget the back stitch at the start and all the way to the end. Okay, so go ahead and do that now. So I'm stitching in the collar. So again, I'm leaving this top piece loose. All right, guys, so I went ahead and stitched in my collar. And guys, make sure that you don't have any puckers, right, on the outside. And if you do, just unpick those stitches and go back at it again. Give it a good press on the outside. Once you do that, I want you to press your seam allowance up towards the collar and that you trim all of that extra seam allowance. And then I want you to go ahead and yet again, you can either slip stitch or you can go ahead and attach your collar in the inside on that folded area, and you can pin right on the outside, and you can stitch in the ditch. You just have to make sure yet again that you are catching this side, which your top stitching stitch in the ditch. So go ahead and do that now. All right, guys. So I went ahead and stitched in the ditch on my collar, and usually I slip stitch my collar in. I will tell you that I slip stitch usually my collar in, but this time around I decided to just go ahead and stitch in the ditch, and I did, right? So now that that's done, I want you to go ahead and measure and set your buttons. Remember, your buttonholes are going to go on the left hand side and your buttons are going to go on the right. All right, guys, stay tuned for pictures of the dress, and also I will put a couple on my blog. And guys, did you like this sew along broken into 3 parts, or do you just like one very long video? Let me know in the comments below for any of our other sew alongs. And of course, if you have any questions or comments, go ahead and leave them below. All right, guys, I will see you next time. Bye.